Fatima Reyes, a young Filipina model chasing her dreams, caught the obsessive attention of Sheikh Khalid Al-Mansoor, a man whose wealth and power could bend the rules. But his obsession would turn her glamorous life into a nightmare, leading to one of the most brutal crimes Dubai had ever seen. Dubai was a city of extremes, where glass towers reflected the sun like mirrors and streets pulsed with the hum of luxury cars and private jets. It was a place where dreams seemed within reach, yet shadows lingered behind every glittering façade. Amid this dazzling world, a young Filipina model arrived, her presence like a spark against the polished backdrop of the city. She carried herself with elegance and confidence, capturing the attention of photographers, event organizers, and the elite circles she now entered. Her beauty was undeniable, a perfect blend of charm, innocence, and sophistication that made her stand out in a city obsessed with perfection. Among those captivated by her was a wealthy sheikh, a man whose name alone commanded respect across the Gulf. He was known for his wealth, power, and influence, attending exclusive gatherings that only the elite could enter. His life was a series of opulent events, where yachts, private planes, and designer fashion were mere everyday accessories. Yet beneath the veneer of privilege, there was a side of him that few had seen: possessive, intense, and dangerously obsessive when it came to desire. Their worlds collided at a high-profile fashion gala. She was radiant, attracting attention from all corners, but it was the sheikh's gaze that lingered longer than anyone else's. Where others saw charm and charisma, he saw possession. He began to follow her career closely, attending shows, sending lavish gifts, and creating opportunities that seemed irresistible. For her, the attention was flattering at first, a validation of her beauty and ambition. She had come to Dubai seeking opportunity, and suddenly it appeared that opportunity had arrived in the form of wealth and influence she could barely imagine. The sheikh's fascination quickly transformed into a quiet obsession. Every social media post, every public appearance was monitored and commented on. The gifts became more extravagant, the invitations more frequent, until it was no longer admiration, but a carefully woven web of control. Luxury cars, designer bags, and private dinners became tools to ensure her dependence on him, blurring the line between generosity and manipulation. The model, though aware of the intensity, initially accepted it as part of the city's fast-paced, glamorous lifestyle, yet, even in the midst of luxury, there was a growing unease. Those closest to her noticed subtle changes, her laughter a little forced, her eyes a little wary. Dubai's sparkling skyline seemed to cast long shadows in her life. The sheikh's obsession was no longer hidden behind charm. It was a force that was gradually shaping her choices, restricting her freedom under the guise of care and attention. The glitter of the city could not conceal the darkness creeping into her life, a darkness that would soon escalate beyond imagination. In a city where wealth could buy almost anything, some things remained out of reach. Freedom, safety, and peace of mind were fragile, easily shattered by the obsessions of the powerful. What began as admiration and fascination would soon set in motion a chain of events that no one could have predicted, revealing the deadly intersection of desire, power, and control in one of the most luxurious cities in the world. Life for the model in Dubai seemed like a dream that had come true. She moved through the city as if she belonged to a different world, a realm of opulence where luxury cars lined the streets and the aroma of high-end restaurants mingled with the warm desert air. Every day brought new experiences that most could only imagine: exclusive parties in towering penthouses, private yacht trips along the glittering coastline, and invitations to events where celebrities and socialites gathered under crystal chandeliers. Photographers captured her every move, social media flooded with images of her glamorous life, and fans admired her beauty and elegance from afar. The city, in all its brightness and wealth, seemed to recognize her as one of its shining stars. Yet beneath the glossy surface, tension quietly began to take root. The sheikh's attention was no longer a simple indulgence of admiration. It had evolved into a complex game of control. Every gift she received carried an unspoken expectation, every invitation an invisible chain. Luxury had become a tool of manipulation, a way to remind her that her life of comfort and privilege depended on his approval. Friends noticed how she began to hesitate before speaking, how her laughter sometimes faltered at moments when she should have been carefree. Dubai's dazzling skyline hid cracks in her world, invisible to outsiders, but painfully real to her. The model tried to maintain a balance, enjoying the privileges of her life while quietly fearing the consequences of displeasing the sheikh. She traveled in style, attended high-profile events, and posed for glossy magazine spreads, all while under the watchful eyes of someone whose fascination bordered on obsession. Her days were filled with shopping for designer clothes, sipping champagne in rooftop lounges, and attending gatherings where everyone knew her name. But even in these moments of indulgence, a sense of unease lingered, like a shadow at the edge of her vision. The excitement of wealth was inseparable from the tension it brought. Social media amplified the pressure. Every post, every story was scrutinized. Compliments from followers became dangerous. Too much attention from the wrong person a potential threat. The sheikh's control extended beyond gifts and invitations. It reached into the digital world, a place where she had once found freedom. The city's glittering lights and luxurious lifestyle had transformed into a cage that sparkled on the outside, but confined her in ways no one could see. Despite the underlying fear, there was a part of her that clung to the life she had built. The thrill of fashion shows, the allure of exclusive events, and the promise of wealth were difficult to resist. Yet she began to realize that luxury could not erase the growing danger. Her life, once full of excitement and ambition, was now a delicate performance where every step had to be calculated. The glittering world of Dubai offered fame, beauty, and wealth, but it demanded a price few could see coming. A price she was slowly learning might be far greater than she could afford to pay. As the model's life in Dubai continued to dazzle on the surface, subtle warning signs began to emerge, quiet threads of tension that hinted at a darker reality. What had initially seemed like admiration had grown into something far more controlling, and the sheikh's obsession became increasingly apparent. His presence was no longer merely generous. It was suffocating. The extravagant gifts and invitations, once symbols of admiration, began to carry a silent weight, an unspoken demand for constant attention and loyalty. The model, once free to navigate her career and social life, now found herself under constant scrutiny, where each decision, each interaction, could provoke consequences she dared not imagine. Friends and colleagues started noticing changes in her behavior. She was often distracted at events, her smiles sometimes hesitant, her laughter occasionally forced. She avoided speaking about her private life in detail and seemed to flinch at even casual remarks. Those who had known her before Dubai's luxury took over could sense a tension that had not been there before, a quiet anxiety lurking beneath her glamorous exterior. Yet fear and the allure of wealth kept her silent. In a city where appearances mattered more than truth, confessing unease could have jeopardized her entire lifestyle. The sheikh's influence extended far beyond the lavish parties and high-end restaurants. He monitored her social media accounts, tracking interactions and analyzing photographs for signs of impropriety. Even subtle gestures, like a friendly chat with another guest or a photograph taken without his knowledge, were perceived as betrayals. The model became aware that she was living in a constant state of observation, where her every move might be interpreted as defiance. The thrill of wealth had begun to feel like a trap, a gilded cage from which there was no simple escape. Rumors began circulating in Dubai's elite social circles, whispers about the sheikh's temper and history with women who disappointed him. Some suggested that those who crossed him faced consequences far beyond public embarrassment. The model herself became increasingly aware that the luxury surrounding her was inseparable from danger. Her once bright career and social life were now intertwined with a perilous power dynamic, where fear lurked behind every act of generosity. The glittering skyline, the yachts, the designer boutiques, all had started to feel like instruments of control rather than symbols of freedom. Despite the tension, she tried to maintain the illusion of normalcy. She attended high-profile events, smiled for photographers, and curated her social media presence to reflect a life of perfection. Yet internally, she felt the strain mounting, realizing that she was slowly losing autonomy over her own choices. Each day became a delicate negotiation, balancing the allure of luxury with the creeping anxiety that the Sheikh's obsession would escalate. What had begun as admiration had now turned into an invisible chain, constraining her movements, her friendships, and her very sense of self. In Dubai, a city that glittered like no other, appearances could be deceiving. Wealth could protect, but it could also imprison. And for the model, the warning signs were clear. The closer she moved to the life of extravagance she had dreamed of, the tighter the grip of obsession became. Behind the veneer of glamour, a storm was quietly gathering, a storm that would soon engulf her world in ways she could never have anticipated. The model's growing unease reached a point where she could no longer ignore the dangerous intensity of the Sheikh's obsession. What had once seemed like the charm and allure of wealth had transformed into a suffocating presence that shadowed every decision she made. She began to recognize the subtle but unmistakable patterns of control, constant surveillance, coded messages hidden in gifts, and persistent pressure that demanded her full attention and obedience. Every interaction was analyzed, every choice questioned. Even minor deviations from his expectations seemed to trigger silent warnings, leaving her anxious and wary at all times. Realizing that wealth alone could not protect her, she began to take secret measures to regain some semblance of autonomy. Quiet meetings with trusted friends and discreet consultations with legal advisors became her lifeline. She researched her rights, explored escape routes, and documented incidents that revealed the Sheikh's increasingly erratic behavior. Though she moved carefully, a sense of urgency gnawed at her. She understood that one wrong move could provoke a reaction far beyond public scrutiny or legal intervention. In Dubai, where power and influence often shielded the elite from consequences, she knew that acting openly could be dangerous. The Sheikh, however, interpreted her attempts at independence as betrayal. What had been subtle control now escalated into a relentless obsession. Private investigators were reportedly hired to track her movements, and he made arrangements to subtly isolate her from friends and colleagues who might support her. Even as she moved through glamorous events and luxurious locations, she felt the tightening grip of a man unwilling to accept any loss of control. The city's glittering streets, once symbols of opportunity, now felt like pathways to entrapment. Every attempt she made to assert her freedom was met with veiled threats disguised as concern. Lavish gifts and extravagant gestures were accompanied by expectations, carefully framed to maintain his dominance. The lines between admiration, affection, and coercion had blurred completely. She began to feel as though her life was no longer her own, each decision monitored, each action scrutinized, each step a negotiation with a powerful and dangerous obsession. Even the smallest signs of independence became dangerous acts in the eyes of the Sheikh. The tension escalated in private, behind closed doors. She felt trapped in a world that promised luxury but demanded absolute compliance. Nights were restless, filled with anxiety and fear of what might happen next. Days were spent navigating a precarious balance between survival and maintaining appearances. She could not trust anyone fully, knowing the Sheikh's influence reached far and wide in Dubai's elite circles. Isolation became an unspoken reality, even as she appeared to the world as a star basking in wealth and admiration. It was clear that the situation could not continue indefinitely. The model understood that remaining passive would only strengthen the Sheikh's obsession and increase the risks. Yet any action carried its own dangers, forcing her to weigh carefully every move she made. Dubai's dazzling skyline, the city of dreams and wealth, had become a dangerous labyrinth where one wrong decision could have irreversible consequences. The stage was now set for a confrontation between freedom and obsession, a battle whose outcome would shape the rest of her life and ultimately plunge her into a perilous struggle from which there might be no return. One evening, the model vanished without a trace. It was as if the vibrant energy she had carried through Dubai's glamorous streets had been erased in an instant. Friends and colleagues who had last seen her at a high-profile event were stunned. Messages went unanswered, calls went straight to voicemail, and even her social media accounts fell silent. At first, some believed she had left voluntarily, seeking a temporary escape from the suffocating attention of the sheikh. But as hours turned into days, fear began to replace hope. Rumors started circulating whispering of abduction and foul play of someone powerful enough to remove a person from the city without leaving a trace. Authorities quickly initiated investigations. Yet the case was anything but simple. The sheikh's influence in Dubai complicated matters at every turn. Security cameras near her apartment and favorite locations showed suspicious activity, but nothing definitively linked him to her disappearance. The luxurious city that prided itself on safety now felt fragile, its glittering streets hiding a sinister possibility that someone could vanish from public life without warning. Police worked tirelessly, sifting through digital evidence, analyzing surveillance footage, and interviewing friends, yet each lead seemed to twist back into uncertainty. Public fascination grew as the story leaked into the media. News outlets covered her sudden disappearance with intense scrutiny, speculating about the identity of the powerful individual who may have been involved. Social media users posted theories, some fueled by facts, others by fear and imagination. The narrative of a glamorous young model caught in a web of obsession captivated the public, drawing attention far beyond the city itself. Dubai, often seen as a symbol of luxury and modernity, was suddenly portrayed as a city where wealth and power could mask darkness lurking behind closed doors. Friends and family of the model were gripped by worry and frustration. Every day without answers intensified the feeling of helplessness. The more they tried to piece together her last known movements, the more apparent it became that someone with considerable influence had meticulously controlled what she did, where she went, and who she spoke to. Even attempts to reach the sheikh for comment were met with carefully orchestrated silence or vague statements that did nothing to quell suspicion. The tension between her potential voluntary absence and the possibility of abduction created an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty that gripped everyone close to her. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered a disturbing pattern. Prior threats, the obsessive monitoring of her digital presence, and the sudden tightening of the sheikh's influence all pointed to a calculated escalation. Dubai's glittering streets, the same streets that had once symbolized opportunity and glamour for her, now seemed like a maze of hidden danger. Every corner, every opulent high-rise, held the potential for secrets that powerful people preferred to keep buried. The disappearance marked a turning point. It was no longer a story of luxury, ambition, and admiration. It had transformed into a chilling tale of power, control, and the terrifying consequences of obsession. With every day that passed, the stakes grew higher, and the question that haunted everyone remained. Where was the model, and what had happened to her in a city where even the wealthy and powerful were not always held accountable? Weeks after the model's sudden disappearance, the city of Dubai was shaken by a discovery that no one could have anticipated. Her lifeless body was found in a secluded villa on the outskirts of the city, a location far removed from the sparkling skyline and luxury streets she had once walked daily. The villa itself was pristine, its lavish interiors echoing the wealth that had surrounded her life. Yet inside, there was a scene of violence and despair. Forensic reports revealed a struggle that had been both prolonged and brutal, indicating that her final moments were filled with terror and desperation. The sheer savagery of the crime stunned investigators, journalists, and the public alike. Dubai, known for its sophistication and order, was confronted with a crime that shattered the illusion of safety and glamour. The immediate investigation revealed that the crime was meticulously planned. Evidence suggested that the assailant had tracked her movements for weeks, predicting her routines and exploiting moments when she was vulnerable. Items in the villa hinted at a combination of obsession and rage, an intensity that could only be described as personal. Forensic experts noted that the injuries were not accidental, they were deliberate, a horrifying manifestation of anger and control. The model's life, once filled with admiration and opportunity, had ended in a way that left even seasoned investigators unsettled. News of the discovery spread rapidly, igniting a media frenzy. Journalists flooded the scene, eager to report every detail, while social media exploded with speculation and shock. The story of the model who had lived a life of luxury under the watchful eyes of a powerful sheikh now became a chilling narrative of obsession and murder. Public fascination was driven not only by the brutality of the crime, but by the unsettling reality that it involved one of the wealthiest and most influential figures in the country. Dubai's glittering streets, yachts, and penthouses suddenly seemed like a veneer, hiding the dangerous extremes to which power and obsession could escalate. Investigators faced immense pressure as they pieced together evidence. Witnesses came forward, reluctant yet compelled by the scale of the tragedy, recounting moments that painted a picture of escalating tension and fear. Digital footprints, messages, and financial transactions began to reveal a pattern, connecting the sheikh to the events leading up to the model's death. Each revelation highlighted the deadly intersection of wealth, power, and unrestrained obsession, emphasizing how someone with influence could manipulate circumstances to devastating effect. The discovery of the body forced a reckoning within Dubai's elite circles. The case became more than a crime investigation. It was a mirror reflecting the hidden dangers of a society where wealth could obscure morality and justice. For the public, the horror was twofold: the loss of a young life full of potential, and the terrifying realization that extreme obsession could drive even the most sophisticated city into the shadows of brutality. The model's death became a haunting symbol, a reminder that behind every dazzling façade there could lie violence, control, and fear. In the wake of this revelation, the stage was set for a confrontation with power itself. The authorities now had to navigate not only the evidence of the crime, but also the intricate networks of influence that had shielded the perpetrator for so long. Dubai would never see its glittering streets in the same way again. The crime had exposed a darkness beneath the luxury, leaving a city and a nation grappling with shock, grief, and the urgent need for justice. The trial of the sheikh became one of the most scrutinized legal battles in Dubai's recent history, drawing attention from the media, social commentators, and the public alike. For weeks, the courtroom was filled with tension, as lawyers, investigators, and witnesses assembled to recount the events leading up to the model's disappearance and brutal murder. Every piece of evidence revealed a complex web of control, obsession, and manipulation, painting a chilling portrait of a man whose wealth had long shielded him from scrutiny. The city watched, captivated and horrified, as the narrative of glamour and luxury slowly transformed into a story of terror and abuse. Witness after witness stepped forward, many of them initially hesitant, recounting subtle signs of intimidation and coercion. Friends spoke of her growing anxiety, colleagues detailed unusual restrictions imposed on her movements, and employees described the sheikh's relentless monitoring of her digital life. Each testimony reinforced the picture of a young woman trapped by the obsession of a powerful man, her freedom systematically eroded by wealth and influence. The courtroom became a stage where the interplay of desire, power, and violence was laid bare, and for the public, it was both shocking and mesmerizing. The prosecution presented forensic evidence linking the sheikh to the crime, including surveillance footage, messages, and financial transactions that traced the careful planning leading up to her disappearance. Experts testified about the meticulous nature of the crime, emphasizing the deliberate and prolonged violence that had ended her life. The defense attempted to portray the sheikh as a misunderstood man, suggesting motives of jealousy and emotional distress rather than premeditation. Yet the overwhelming weight of evidence, combined with the consistency of witness accounts, made the narrative of obsession and calculated cruelty unavoidable. Public interest in the trial was intense. News outlets broadcast updates daily. Social media users dissected every argument, and hashtags relating to the case trended across platforms. The story was no longer just about a crime. It had become a mirror reflecting the hidden dangers of unchecked power and influence in a city that prided itself on order and sophistication. Dubai's glittering skyline, its luxury cars and penthouses, were contrasted with the chilling reality that extreme wealth could facilitate acts of manipulation and violence. The trial exposed how appearances could be deceiving, and how obsession could escalate into deadly consequences when combined with privilege. For the model's family and friends, the courtroom proceedings were a bittersweet mix of relief and grief. Justice was finally being pursued, but it could never undo the pain of losing someone so young under such horrific circumstances. The trial forced the elite of Dubai to confront uncomfortable truths about power, control, and accountability. It revealed that even in a city of opulence, laws could prevail against influence when determination and courage intersected with meticulous investigation. As the trial drew toward its conclusion, the sheikh's status and reputation were irreparably tarnished. The narrative of wealth and admiration had been replaced by one of fear, obsession, and violence, a cautionary tale for those who equated power with immunity. The courtroom became a symbol not just of justice for the model, but of the fragile balance between authority and accountability, a reminder that behind luxury and influence, darkness could fester, but truth and justice could ultimately emerge. The aftermath of the trial left Dubai in a state of reflection and unease. The city, long admired for its glittering skyline and image of safety, now confronted a reality that wealth and power could mask dangerous extremes. The sheikh's conviction sent shockwaves through elite circles, signaling that influence alone could not shield someone from the consequences of obsession and violence. For the public, it was a sobering lesson. Behind the glamour and luxury, darkness could linger, waiting for the moment to erupt. The model's tragic story became a symbol of both caution and awareness, a reminder of how obsession, when combined with power, could escalate to unimaginable horror. Families and young professionals in Dubai, especially women navigating the world of modeling and high society, began to view their surroundings differently. The story forced a reconsideration of trust, independence, and the hidden costs of ambition in environments dominated by wealth and influence. While the model's life had been short, her experiences sparked conversations about boundaries, control, and personal safety in spaces that were often assumed to be glamorous and secure. Her image, once associated with elegance and aspiration, became entwined with resilience, courage, and a cautionary awareness of the dangers that could accompany desire and admiration. Authorities also took the lessons of the case seriously, initiating reviews of legal protections, surveillance protocols, and the ways in which powerful individuals could exploit influence. Investigators who had worked tirelessly on the case shared insights into the complexity of pursuing justice against someone deeply embedded in social and financial networks. Their work revealed the importance of meticulous evidence gathering, witness protection, and digital monitoring in uncovering truth in cases involving wealth and power. The successful prosecution became a landmark moment, showing that accountability could transcend privilege and providing a framework for future investigations. The sheikh's fall from grace was complete. His social standing, influence, and carefully constructed public persona were shattered. Once admired in elite circles, he became a cautionary figure, a stark example of how obsession, when left unchecked, could destroy not only others, but also one's own life. Meanwhile, the model's memory persisted as a poignant reminder of the human cost of control, manipulation, and unchecked desire. Her life, though tragically cut short, became a symbol of awareness, resilience, and the consequences of entanglement with dangerous obsession. Even as Dubai slowly returned to its routine of opulence and modernity, the story lingered in the public consciousness. News outlets continued to revisit the case on anniversaries. Documentaries analyzed every detail, and social media discussions kept her story alive. It was no longer simply a tale of crime. It had transformed into a lesson, an exploration of the fragile balance between admiration and danger, wealth and vulnerability, desire and destruction. The city itself, glittering and proud, had been forced to confront its own shadows, acknowledging that behind every glittering facade, a darker truth could exist. In the end, the legacy of the case was clear. The model's story, horrific as it was, taught Dubai and the world that obsession and control can hide behind luxury and charm. But truth and justice, when pursued with courage and diligence, can prevail. It became a haunting, unforgettable tale, a reminder that behind every life of glamour there can be invisible struggles, and that even the most powerful individuals are not immune to accountability when their actions cross the line into obsession and violence.